Um, so I used to watch a lot of my older videos from like way back in the day, and like I watched like some of my older videos, like maybe the first couple 10, and I'm a little disappointed in the videos that I made currently in comparison to the videos I made back then because when I first made my channel, I initially wanted to make like I wanted my channel to be kind of like a kind of like me reviewing and like fictional pieces like anime and video games and fictional books that I was reading at the time. And like I was very edit heavy. I was very edit heavy. I was very I had like I had a lot more creativity back then, I would say, than I probably have right now. I think the thing that really sort of like you can literally see my if you actually sat down and like watched all of my videos from my first one to this one, you will probably see the shift from what I made back then and from what like obviously you'll see life kind of like affect me. You'll see life kind of affect me in certain ways, and also probably see that I was a ridiculously toxic individual growing up. Like I was not like there's like that song "Who I Am Hates Who I've Been" is no more apparent than it is right now. Although I genuinely don't hate who I used to be, I just sort of is like, wow, I'm glad that I don't like this perspective that I have of certain things anymore. In any case, one this video is just me, not more or less a video for myself of me just basically saying, wow, I cannot believe this. I've gotten so old that I'm getting grays in my mustache now. That's so frustrating. Um, I'm reminding myself that I do still like anime. I haven't watched anime in years, but I still do, as an art form, I still appreciate it. And the reason why I like anime is because I genuinely still like stories. I don't really like watching a lot of works of fiction nowadays. I kind of had to force myself to watch Dexter back in the earlier this year, and I'm part of me is interested in watching the White Lotus because of all the people talking about it. But White Lotus is giving me the it's giving me the white whale story effect where it's just a bunch of people talking about it and talking about how great it is, and I probably might watch it and it's gonna be like mid at best. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because like I do realize that I still do like anime. I still do like there's anime that I could watch today and it'll make me feel the same way that it did when I was a kid. I was always a big fan of specifically Outlaw Star. Like a lot of space anime I really enjoy. So Outlaw Star, Tekken Man Blades, Cowboy Bebop, um, stories that really like stories that make space into like this big thing. Stories that involve like people just sort of floating out in space. I don't know what it is. Those always were kind of cool to me. But obviously, the older I got, the more my stuff started to change with me. And when it comes to anime specifically, there's a reason why I don't watch anime now as much as I did back then. And one of those big reasons is because Crunchyroll started to like charge. Like there was a lot of shows and stuff that I used to be able to watch for free through Crunchyroll. And when Crunchyroll started charging for me to watch those same shows, like I said, I'm poor, y'all. Like I'm not like I can only pay for so much stuff before it makes me bleed a little bit. I'm not trying to do that, especially not for something I feel like should not necessarily should be free, but at least should cost a little. I don't know, cost a little less or whatever. But then again, like I do still, but like I said, I do still like it. I also do like Crunchyroll because it offered up more than just anime. It offered up shows that like soap operas and stuff like that that were parts of that show in Japan. Like I was actually watching Great Teacher Onizuka, the live action on there. And one of the things I really enjoyed was that they had one of the Kamen Rider actors in the first episode, which I thought was kind of cool. In any case, that was one of the reasons why. Like once it became more of a challenge for me to watch it on Crunchyroll, I became less enthused about watching it in general. But then I had a roommate who had Crunchyroll, and sometimes it let me watch anime with him, and it became apparently, like, he was watching like the newer anime. He probably might be watching some of the newer anime right now. And one of the newer anime and some of the newer anime that I was watching really kind of like there was maybe it was always this way and I just ignored it, or maybe it was always this way and I just ignored it. But there's just parts of anime to me that just felt like more edgy than it should have been. It was more kind of like just one of the things one of the things that used to kind of get me into anime back then was the fight scenes. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, you're growing up, you're male. You're male, and you're not really used to seeing fight scenes be this flashy and this explosive and this dynamic. Dragon Ball Z really did kind of like make it seem like the proper fight scenes was hand to hand, and every so often you're literally throwing light grenades at each other, just like explosions, 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 punch, 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 explosions, superpower, punch, 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 punch. That's what it was back then. But then the older I got, the more I started to realize I care more about what people are saying than what people are doing. The more I started watching fights, the more I started asking myself, what brought this fight along? Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? Why is this happening? Who should I cheer for? And it was, and like people, and it felt like the people around me was like, shut up, stop asking questions, just enjoy the fight. You know what I'm saying? Like it felt less like people would. I was a guy who was asking questions around people who was just cheering on a fight just for the sake of cheering on a fight, and it made me feel really out of place. And I started watching less anime with fighting in it, and I started watching anime that was mostly about like dialogue and dialect, and like really really kind of like really plot heavy, really story heavy. There was a one anime in particular that I watched that Angel Beats, which whew, Angel Beats. That made me a little. Oh man, that like thinking about Angel Beats now messes with me a little bit. Messes with me a little bit, considering like all the stuff that happens in there. The hands down, hands up, high five, empty. You'll know it if you saw it. In any case, though, but like I started watching less anime that had like these obnoxiously. But I still did watch like I watched Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. I loved that series. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was amazing, not necessarily because of the fights, but also because of what led up to it. It was a group of people who were being oppressed, who challenged their oppressors, and ultimately who challenged their oppressors, and kind of went on to become like literal rulers of the universe. It was kind of like this cool story of kind of like of challenging the people who got their boot on your neck and taking the boot off your neck. I care more about plots and more about story than anything else. But as time went by, I was introduced to shows like Attack on Titan and Goblin Slayer and Demon Slayer, and I started to see this rise in edginess, but edgy behavior. One of the things that sort of kind of like sort of turned me off of anime a little bit was a series called Puella Magica Madoka, I think it was called. And it initially starts off as, oh, a little series about magical girls, and they're just getting ruthlessly and brutally killed. And it's like I understand there is this thing apparently where it's like you have writers or you have like manga writers who are apparently so upset because their serious, more grislier series were kind of getting overshadowed by cutesy little cute anime girl stuff, and that was sort of them just basically saying, we're angry about this. This is how we're like, here you want cutesy anime girl? Yeah, this is what we think of your cutesy anime girl. Yeah, life is grisly. Learn to edge up. I don't know how Japanese masculinity manosphere culture works, but I do know that was kind of a thing. Like I think it was like them ultimately challenging K-On, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. Um, but in any case, though, so but it became less. It felt less like it felt less like I was reading a story and more like I was just reading an edgelord's manifesto as to why being an edgelord is okay for them. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't want to. I got kind of tired of that. Another thing too was that like I started interacting with the anime fandom, and I don't know if y'all actually ever sat down and watched my other videos, but I do have a bit of a take about the anime fandom and just fandom in general. And I still have this belief. But the anime fandom, it felt less like the whole thing was that fandom sort of push themselves as nerds. And nerds, for me, is a group of smart people who would a group of smart people who overthink anime and who overthink works of fiction in general. But in this instance, the fandom that I had encountered were just like they would all they cared about was the fights. All they cared about was the fights and the fan fiction and they wanted to they care like it felt less like nerds discussing art and more like sports fans discussing their favorite team and why their favorite team could beat your favorite team. And I always sort of like every conversation in these anime fandom circles automatically went to my favorite is the best because I like them. And like it was just nothing more than that. You know what I'm saying? There was no creativity. There was no smarter conversations than my favorite is the best because I like them. You know, your favorite sucks because they can't beat my favorite or they can't beat anybody in general. It felt less like conversation. It felt less like conversations about the artwork. Like like once again like the complexities that is Japanese Superman, which is Dragon Ball Z. You could literally compare. You could compare him to Sun Wukong, Superman, Chinese mythology in general. Akira Toriyama's interest in like explaining like multiple cultures. You could literally like use Dragon Ball Z to talk about technology because of the scouters and the Saiyan ships and stuff like that. You could talk about planets. You could like talk about a whole bunch of things from Dragon Ball Z. But instead, these guys, all they wanted to do was talk about who would win in a fight between Goku and dot dot dot. You know? And it was just stuff like that. I think what really sort of like stressed me out about these things was they weren't just discussing the fights. They were just being edgy about it. Like say going back to the Goblin Slayer thing where the woman was assaulted in like I think it was the first episode, and that was all they talked about. It was just like the joke was that she got assaulted. You know what I'm saying? And their justification was, well, it's not a real character, so who cares? Like you need to quit feeling sad about fake anime characters. And it was like no, it's the fact that you're making jokes about this when the series has clearly more stuff in it than just that. You know what I'm saying? And same thing with there was even jokes about it with Berserk when you find out that the main character was also like assaulted as a child, and people would make jokes about the assaulter being like this guy that was just undefeated in fights because all he could do is just assault his victims. You know what I'm saying? It was less. It felt less like the anime community is a big part of why I stopped discussing this stuff, because like why I wanted to like stop sort of take a break from anime, because every single time I would find them like liking a series or enjoying a series, it would almost always be because there's a villain in there who is either just remorselessly cruel and practically untouchable for the majority of the series. And I'm just like, I don't want to see a series where a villain is just getting away with their cruelty for like the majority of the series just because. Like one of the things that one of the things about fiction that's kind of like been pushed nowadays is that people are basically saying, it's a good writing because if you just had a bad guy lose all the time, it wouldn't make any sense. Meanwhile, one of the big reasons why I like The Last of Us is because the person who, spoiler alert, shot Joel's daughter got murked within minutes. You know what I'm saying? Granted, there was a bigger story to be told here. But the guy who shot Joel's daughter, he ain't living. He didn't live to see that. You see what I'm saying? A villain got killed, and stuff still went on. Meanwhile, you let these guys say it. It's like, nah, villain losing is gonna like make that series look kind of weak and blah 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 blah. It's the case of the good guys shouldn't win, and I don't like that. So it was just like a lot of stuff, man. It's like they started making jokes about some of the most terrible stuff. They started like comparing. Like I said, it sounds like I said they did what I call sportified, where they basically turned anime and all art into a sport. Instead of talking about the complexities of certain things, there's a lot of things that you can like. There's a lot of things you can pick from as far as discussions is concerned from anime in general. And these guys just basically said, "Nah, man, my team can beat your team because my team is stronger than your team. Here's why. Here's the stats." Like power scaling, power scaling, power scaling. It's like that's it. That's all they cared about. So that was another reason why. The first reason is because anime just started getting edgy. But as and the second reason because of the community itself. But like yeah, like it feels less like I can't get into this new anime because like one of the few things that we tend to forget, one of the few things that's very easy to kind of like overlook is that a lot of is that the in World War II Japan supported the other guys. So so there was a lot of ties into a lot of anime and manga series being dedicated to this idea that what the other guys were fighting for is actually a good thing or something to kind of be put to the forefront. Whether or not it's good is probably just a point of debate, but it was like they definitely put it out there to have a discussion about and stuff like that. And I just think that that's a little peculiar. Attack on Titan comes to mind because now is like because like the whole thing is that like you kind of have this idea of why the villain is the villain, and so now the question is the villain a villain, like, or is what they did a villainous act that's technically justified? I don't want to have these types of conversations when it comes to anime or just fictions in general. I just want to see a bad guy I just want to see a bad guy lose. That's it. But I'm saying that to say that despite all of that stuff that I just brought up, I still, in fact, do like anime. I like anime. It's the same reason why I like stories. The same reason why I like art. I watch it. I look at art because I want to be able to like if there is a complex message in there, I want to be able to understand my own personal message from it. And I like a good story for the same reason. But I also like a good story because I want to see that story in a way that I enjoy. But I'm not trying to see a bad guy commit a completely atrocious act of cruelty and then just get away with it for like at least a good 80% of the story, just for the final 20% involves actually looking for this person, and then the final 10% means finding that person and then fighting them. I'm not trying to see that. You know what I'm saying? Like I can watch like I said, how long did it take for the dude in Demon Slayer to take down the guy who killed his family? How long did that take? Did the Goblin Slayer ever like take down all the goblins? Did Aaron Yeager succeed in taking down all the Titans? You know what I'm saying? What I still watch One Piece. I'll say that because One Piece is definitely one of the few series out there where it's like here's a guy who sees a group of people being oppressed by a system that is like just holding them down, and he goes up to one of the guys who did it and punches him in the face. He punches a slaver in the face, y'all. I love One Piece. Um, I also love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure because for all the randomness that series has, I mean, what can I say? Got some good music references. I just hope that they don't have a P Diddy reference in there at any point because we all know that he probably might throw something up in there like that one day. Shout out to Meg Thee Stallion for also like being a big part of the anime community and everything like that. I just wish I could. I just wish I watched enough from anime to appreciate what she did a lot more. It's just crazy though. But it is crazy though because like once again I do still like anime. I still like a good story. I still like a story that I consider to be good. I'll say that because I don't want to say a good story because that's universal. That's a universal term, and I don't want to be universal. But I still like stories that I enjoy. I still like art that I enjoy, and I still like anime that I enjoy. I hope I made sense in this. I don't know if I did, but love and peace, y'all.